This is week 168 of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. I'm Anna Belokur, reporting to you from Kyiv, and I'll be taking you through the top stories from Ukraine this week. This week was a roller coaster from start to finish. Last Sunday, in the middle of the Victory Day ceasefire that never really was, Russian President Vladimir Putin rejected Ukraine's proposal of a full, month-long unconditional ceasefire, and instead suggested that the two countries engage in direct negotiations in Istanbul, Turkey this week. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky turned the tables by saying that he was willing to meet directly with Putin in Istanbul on Thursday. The Kremlin stayed quiet for a couple of days on this, as U.S. President Donald Trump increased the pressure by saying that he believed both leaders would attend the impending talks. Ultimately, Putin didn't appear in Istanbul and didn't offer an official explanation as to why he and all other top Russian officials ghosted on the very talks that they proposed holding. The message that most people took from the day was that Russia was never really interested in holding direct peace talks at a high level with Ukraine, and no amount of pressure from the US or Europe was going to change that. Going into Thursday, Ukraine stated that their primary objective in negotiating with Russia was to secure a ceasefire, something that Russia so far has refused to accept or uphold, even in partial form. If you recall, a handful of European leaders traveled here to Kyiv last weekend, and the EU released a statement on Sunday calling for Russia to accept a complete ceasefire, prompting Russia to suggest these direct negotiations instead. The EU, which also imposed its 17th sanctions package on Russia just a week after saying the whole bloc will cut off Russian gas imports within 2 years, threatened further sanctions if a ceasefire was not reached this week. These pressures still weren't enough to bring Russia to the negotiating table on anyone else's terms but their own. President Zelensky made clear in the days between Monday and Thursday that he would be fully available to meet with Putin in Istanbul, clearly trying to anticipate and preemptively dismiss any excuses Russia could possibly make. As Trump's attention to the event waned and the attendee list was released on Wednesday night without any high-ranking Russian officials on it, most people came to the conclusion that Putin was very unlikely to make a surprise appearance, although the bizarreness of the week's events did make it feel like nothing was totally off the table right through to the end. Trump said on Thursday that Putin would never have attended the meeting unless both of them attended, and that no deal could be made without the two of them present there together, which implies that Trump may not take Putin's non-attendance at this event as a final straw. Although it's becoming increasingly clear to the world that Ukraine is willing to negotiate, whereas Russia categorically is not, we still don't know what Trump's red line is when it comes to Putin embarrassing him as the peacemaker he claims to be in word, but clearly can't be in action. Back to the talks themselves for a moment. President Zelensky called Russia's low-ranking delegation on Thursday a sham, to which a Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson responded that he was an uneducated clown, to which a Ukrainian Foreign Ministry spokesperson responded that the job of the Russian Foreign Ministry is to bark from Moscow. In the end, Friday's subsequent meeting of delegations marked the first official talks between Ukraine and Russia since 2022. They were brief, lasting less than 2 hours, and did not yield the ceasefire that had been called for all week, although the two countries did agree to an exchange of POWs next week, in which each side will release 1,000 prisoners to the other. The other main result of the extended diplomatic theater in Istanbul is the promise of yet another phone call between Trump and Putin to be held tomorrow, with Trump saying that his main goal is to stop the bloodbath, something that he's proven himself categorically incapable of so far. Overnight on Saturday, Russia launched its single biggest drone attack against Ukraine since the start of the full-scale invasion, indicating that the events of the week had little bearing on its imperial aims. At the Kyiv Independent, reader contributions are our main source of revenue. Shows like Ukraine This Week are only made possible by viewers like you. If you'd like to get more involved in the Kyiv independent community, we would love to have you along. There will be a link to our membership page in the description below. I'd also like to thank everyone who donates directly via YouTube. Your support is greatly appreciated. As Russia stalls peace talks, unconfirmed reports are circulating of Russian troops and equipment amassing along the front line in what many suspect will be an impending offensive to capture more Ukrainian territory. As well as recently increased assaults leading to Russian gains near long-embattled Toretsk in Donetsk Oblast to the east, there's also speculation that Russia may be preparing to launch new activity in Ukraine's northeast, where they're reportedly expanding their footholds in Sumy and Kharkiv oblasts. On Friday, Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky claimed that Russia currently has upwards of 640,000 personnel deployed in its ground forces, up from the 580,000 that were reported by Ukraine's military intelligence about 6 months ago. On the trajectory they're on, this year Russia is set to surpass 1 million casualties sustained throughout the full-scale invasion, and that includes injured, missing, and killed in action. An estimated 160,000 of those occurred in 2025 alone. As always, Russia's sheer size means that the looming crises faced by both countries, like immediate personnel shortages on the battlefield and demographic collapse in the decades to come, are less constraining for Russia in the short term and will remain that way for a while. Russia can keep up frontal assaults that cost them a lot of men, but keep them moving steadily forward, which keeps Ukraine perpetually on the defensive with far fewer personnel. It's been almost exactly a year since Russia launched a new offensive into Kharkiv Oblast in May of 2024, which stalled within a month just a few miles into Ukrainian territory, without meaningful gains or retreats since then. Even though it didn't turn out exactly into a new prong of the front, the Kharkiv offensive was still a huge, sudden reorientation for Ukraine's military, drawing personnel and equipment away from other parts of the front. And it was a horrible shock for the civilian population as well. There was a period where residents of the regional capital, which is Ukraine's second-largest city, were afraid that they could be facing imminent Russian occupation as the front suddenly came within just a few dozen kilometers of them. Experts believe that, similarly to last year, new offensives launched against the northeast of Ukraine this spring and summer would likely divert forces in a way that would allow Russia to push through weakened Ukrainian lines in the east towards a goal that it stated consistently over time: occupying Donetsk Oblast in entirety. Ukraine losing the remainder of the oblast would be devastating militarily and would serve as a huge symbolic win for Putin. Russia claims that Ukraine doesn't want peace and is solely responsible for prolonging the war. But Russia is the one refusing to attend peace talks while setting the stage for further aggression. Here on the ground, soldiers and civilians alike say that a ceasefire feels far away. Russia doesn't seem to be gearing down. They seem to be gearing up. This week saw Ukraine's participation in the 2025 Eurovision Song Contest, the preliminary qualifying round of which was held on Tuesday, and the final last night. Ukraine was represented by Zifferblatt, a twin-led act that qualified with their song Birds of Prey, spelled P-R-A-Y. Austria won this year's grand final, with Ukraine coming in 9th place. Since its debut in the competition 22 years ago, Ukraine has never failed to qualify for a spot in the finals, and has won the overall competition 3 times, in 2004, 2016, and 2022. Russia, on the other hand, has been banned from Eurovision since 2022, due to its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, although Putin said in February of this year that he hopes to revive the Intervision Song Contest, a defunct Cold War-era event that served as a Soviet answer to Eurovision. For our member question this week, I wanted to address something that was asked many times in the comments here on YouTube and on our social media, which is, why am I dressed like this lately? So, Thursday was Vyshyvanka Day, an annual holiday held every third Thursday of May, where many people here in Ukraine and among the Ukrainian diaspora wear traditional Ukrainian clothing. It's become more popular over the years, and especially after the full-scale invasion started, inspiring many people to preserve Ukrainian traditions more carefully. We actually have a full explainer on where Vyshyvankas come from and what they mean to Ukrainians today, and that will be linked in the description below. That's all for this week. We'll be back next Sunday with more news from Ukraine. If you enjoyed this video, please consider becoming a member of the Kyiv Independent community. It's thanks to viewers like you that we can do this work, and we're so grateful for your support. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.